Some people are just scaffolding. They hold you up for a moment, but you're the one who builds the monument. They're meant to be dismantled and forgotten. The words hung in the air, amplified by the theater's state-of-the-art sound system. On stage, Victor bathed in the hot, white glare of a spotlight, a conquering hero accepting his award. The light caught the dust motes dancing around his head, a temporary, shimmering crown. He was looking right at me, a lazy, pitying smile on his face. The audience, full of our peers, applauded his poetic insight. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just raised my glass slightly from my seat in the third row. I remember the scaffolding quite well. I murmured to no one. We met in a windowless room in the sub-basement of the university's arts department. I was pitching a convoluted sci-fi short film idea. Victor was the only one who didn't look bored. Caught me afterward, his eyes alight with an energy that felt like a match to my gasoline. We talked for 3 hours, sketching out scenes on a stained napkin from the campus coffee shop. It felt like finding a missing piece of my own brain. That first collaboration was pure magic, a late-night blur of cheap coffee and a shared whiteboard in my tiny apartment, the ideas flowing so fast we could barely keep up. A week later, he presented a nearly identical concept in our screenwriting class as his own. When I confronted him, he just laughed, a charming, disarming sound. Imitation is flattery, Z lighten up. It was the first red flag, a bright crimson banner I chose to see as pale pink. Our golden period lasted 2 years. We made a name for ourselves on the festival circuit with our short echo chamber. I wrote and directed. He produced and schmoozed. It was a partnership that from the outside looked perfect. Remember celebrating its acceptance into the Sundance Ignite program over dinner at the Musso and Frank Grill, a classic Hollywood spot we couldn't really afford. We shared a steak and he toasted me, his voice thick with emotion. To Zara, he'd said the true architect. But slowly the balance began to shift. In interviews, my role as writer-director was softened to key collaborator. I rationalized it. He was the face of the operation, I was the engine. It worked. Set up our production company, Vanguard Productions, and assured me the paperwork making me a 50-50 partner was with the lawyers. I was too busy writing our first feature, Starlight's End, to chase him for it. Then a $5,000 grant for post-production vanished. Absorbed by administrative fees, he'd said with a shrug. The cracks were forming, but I kept plastering over them, desperate to believe the foundation was still solid. A clue that changed everything arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet ping of a misdirected email. It was from the finance department of a European film festival, a payment confirmation for a $75,000 distribution deal for Echo Chamber. The payment was made out to Victor Stone, sole proprietorship. Not to Vanguard Productions, not to us. The floor fell away. For 3 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I scoured our shared Dropbox, using the version history feature to watch, frame by frame, as Victor methodically edited my name off our early pitch decks, changing written and directed by Zara Ramirez and Victor Stone to a film by Victor Stone. I called Maya, our sound mixer, from that first short. Her voice was hesitant. Yeah, Z, I remember, she said. He had me re-export the final cut. He said the festival had a weird rule about credit formatting and asked me to change your title from co-director to script consultant. I thought it was strange. The betrayal wasn't a single act. It was 1,000 tiny, deliberate cuts. The breaking point came at a mixer celebrating the premiere of Starlight's End. The film had received a standing ovation, and Victor was holding court, surrounded by producers and agents. A famous director, a man named Sterling, was praising the script's labyrinthine plot. Victor, oozing false modesty, draped an arm over my shoulder. Oh, Zara's wonderful, he announced to the circle. A fantastic sounding board. He helps me organize my thoughts, but the real creative heavy lifting, the architecture of it all, that comes from a place she just can't access. The air in my lungs turned to ice. The clinking glasses, the industry chatter, it all faded into a dull roar. In that sudden, profound silence, the plan began to form, not from a place of rage, but of cold, crystalline clarity. As he spoke, I glanced at the festival program in my hand. His bio was a monument to his ego. Victor Stone, the sole creator and writer of Starlight's End. But beneath it, a tiny line of boilerplate text caught my eye. The festival reserved the right to verify all creative claims, and fraudulent submissions could result in disqualification. He had handed me the tool of his own undoing. I hired an intellectual property lawyer named Yasmin Khan. She had sharp eyes and a sharper mind, and she didn't waste a single word. A retainer cost me $15,000, almost all of my savings. For 2 months, we worked in secret. Yasmin built the case while I played the part of the slightly withdrawn, creatively drained partner. Victor called once, a note of suspicion in his voice. You've been quiet, he'd said. Is everything okay? I blamed it on burnout. He bought it instantly. It fit his narrative of me as the fragile artist. Our evidence was a fortress. He had 142 time-stamped emails of me sending him script drafts. We had the Google Doc version history. We had a saved Zoom recording from our early days where we explicitly agreed on a 50-50 split of all profits and credit. Had text messages where he'd written, "You're the better writer, Z. I'm the schmoozer. That's why we work." Maya provided a sworn affidavit about the credit change. The ironic masterstroke came from a film student who'd been our waiter at Musso and Frank. He emailed me after seeing an article about the film, congratulating us both. He distinctly remembered Victor loudly toasting me as the genius who wrote every single word. He was happy to provide a statement. Yasmin drew up the cease and desist and filed a formal grievance with the Writers Guild, but we held off on serving the papers. The plan required a stage. The stage was a Q&A panel, the future of indie storytelling, at a major industry conference. Victor was the keynote speaker. The room was packed. A live stream was broadcasting to thousands. When the moderator opened the floor to questions, I was the first one at the microphone. Camera found my face, projecting it onto the huge screens flanking the stage. My question is for Victor. It's about creative partnerships. He smiled, a picture of magnanimity ready to dispense his wisdom. Then his eyes met mine on the monitor. The smile froze, becoming a brittle mask. His confidence wavered. I asked him to detail the architecture of specific scenes from Starlight's End, scenes born from my own life, whose emotional origins he couldn't possibly know. He stammered, offering vague platitudes about the creative process. I let the silence hang for a moment before moving in. On March 12th of last year, you received a wire transfer for $75,000 for our first film, Echo Chamber. Could you tell the audience, and the festival committee who are currently watching this stream, why that payment was made to a sole proprietorship? Panic flashed in his eyes. As he opened his mouth to form a lie, a process server, a man I'd hired to pose as a conference staffer, walked calmly onto the stage and handed him a thick manila envelope. Moderator looked on, confused. "Victor, you once said some people are just scaffolding, meant to be dismantled. The problem is, you can't build a monument with stolen blueprints. The LLC registration showing your sole ownership, the WGA arbitration filing, and the bank statements detailing your fraud have been sent to every reporter from Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter in this room." He stared at the documents, his face ashen. Microphone picked up the sound of his ragged, shallow breathing. "I believe my question has been answered," I said, and walked away from the mic. The next 24 hours were a maelstrom of digital noise. Scaffolding Gate trended on Twitter. The trade papers ran with the story immediately. I ignored 47 calls from Victor and our stunned mutual friends. The festival officially disqualified Starlight's End. Writers Guild arbitration was swift and brutal, ruling in my favor and awarding me sole writing credit and 60% of all past and future profits from both films, citing malicious and sustained fraudulent conduct. The final judgment, including damages, came to $112,000. Victor was dropped by his agent and the production company he'd planned to launch. His monument had crumbled into dust. 6 months later, I saw him. He was working as a barista in a soulless corporate coffee shop in a Burbank office tower, serving lattes to the same kind of industry people who now pretended not to recognize him. He looked smaller, diminished. I used the money to finally direct my own film, on my own terms. I have a new apartment in Los Feliz with a small balcony that gets the morning sun, a perfect place to write. My circle is smaller now, but it's solid. Maya is my editor. The piece is what I cherish most, the quiet confidence of creating something that is unequivocally mine. Last week, I had a meeting with Mr. Sterling, the director from that fateful party. He'd read my new script and loved it. "You've built a stunning monument here, Ms. Ramirez," he said, his eyes full of genuine admiration. "What's your secret?" "I just made sure I owned the scaffolding."